My dead brother showed up to my wedding after 10 years, and it turns out he faked his death. I know how insane that sounds, but bear with me because this story gets so much darker than you could ever imagine. My name is Emma, and until 3 months ago, I believed my older brother Tyler had died in a hiking accident when I was 16. He was 24 then, my hero, my protector, and the only family I had left after our parents died in a car crash when I was 14. When the park rangers told me they found his backpack and some torn clothing near a cliff, but never recovered his body, I was devastated. I spent years grieving him, visiting the memorial site, keeping his memory alive. Fast forward 10 years, and I'm finally getting married to the love of my life, Jake. We planned this beautiful outdoor ceremony at a vineyard, invited about 100 guests, and I was wearing my mother's vintage wedding dress. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I was walking down the aisle, my heart pounding with joy, when I saw him. Standing at the back of the ceremony area, partially hidden behind a large oak tree, was Tyler. Same dark hair, same piercing blue eyes, same scar above his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bike as a kid. He looked older, obviously, but there was no mistaking it was him. I literally stopped walking. The music kept playing, but I couldn't move. Jake was looking at me with concern. The guests were starting to murmur, and all I could do was stare at this ghost from my past. Tyler met my eyes for just a moment, then turned and disappeared into the woods behind the venue. I somehow managed to finish the ceremony, but I was completely out of it. During the vows, I kept glancing toward the tree line, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Jake noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't exactly say, "Hey honey, I think I just saw my dead brother," in the middle of our wedding. The reception was a blur. I smiled, I danced, I cut the cake, but inside, I was screaming. Finally, during a quiet moment, I told Jake what I'd seen. He was understanding but skeptical, which I get. I would have been too, but I knew what I saw. That night, instead of enjoying my wedding night, I was on my laptop researching. I started with social media, reverse image searches, anything I could think of. And that's when I found the first clue. A LinkedIn profile for a Ryan Mitchell in Portland, Oregon, with a profile picture that looked suspiciously like an older version of my brother. I dug deeper. Ryan Mitchell worked for a tech startup, had been there for about 8 years. The timeline matched perfectly. He would have started this job about 2 years after his supposed death. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. In his work history, there was a gap. No employment listed for the 2 years immediately following Tyler's death. I hired a private investigator named Lisa Chen. I know it sounds extreme, but I had to know the truth. Within 2 weeks, she came back with information that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. Tyler, or Ryan Mitchell, was not only alive but had been living a completely different life in Oregon. He had a wife, Sophia, and 2 kids, aged 7 and 5. He owned a house, paid taxes, had a driver's license under his new identity. But here's where it gets really twisted. The identity wasn't stolen. Ryan Mitchell was a real person who had died in a car accident around the same time Tyler died. Tyler had somehow obtained his social security number and documents. Lisa found bank records showing that Tyler had been accessing our parents' life insurance money for months before his disappearance. See, when our parents died, they left behind a substantial policy, about $400,000. Tyler was the beneficiary, but he was also drowning in gambling debts. Apparently, he owed some very dangerous people a lot of money. I flew to Portland without telling anyone except Jake. I needed answers, and I needed them face to face. I found Tyler at his office building during lunch break. When he saw me walking toward him on the sidewalk, his face went white as a sheet. "Hello, Tyler," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my hands shaking. He looked around frantically, then grabbed my arm and pulled me into a nearby coffee shop. We sat in a corner booth, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Emma, I can explain," he finally said, and his voice was exactly the same as I remembered. "You better start talking," I replied, "and don't you dare lie to me. I know about Ryan Mitchell. I know about Sophia and the kids. I know about the gambling debts and the insurance money." His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since I'd seen him, He looked like the brother I remembered, vulnerable and scared. What Tyler told me next was worse than anything I could have imagined. Yes, he had gambling debts, about $200,000 to some loan sharks who were threatening to kill him, but the insurance money wasn't enough to cover it and give him a fresh start, so he hatched this elaborate plan. He had been planning his fake death for months. He researched Ryan Mitchell after finding his obituary online, managed to get copies of his documents through various illegal means that he wouldn't detail. The hiking trip was carefully orchestrated. He left the backpack and torn clothes himself, then hiked out a different trail where he had a car waiting. But here's the part that destroyed me. He had been watching me for years. He knew when I graduated high school, when I went to college, when I got engaged. He had been keeping tabs on my life while letting me grieve him, letting me suffer through therapy and depression and survivor's guilt. I wanted to reach out so many times, he said, tears in his eyes. But I couldn't. Too much time had passed, and I had a new family. I couldn't destroy their lives. "What about my life?" I screamed, not caring that people in the coffee shop were staring. "What about the 10 years I spent thinking you were dead? What about all the times I needed my big brother and you weren't there because I thought you were gone?" Then he told me something that made everything even worse. The reason he came to my wedding wasn't because he missed me or wanted to see me happy. He came because he was in trouble again. His new identity was starting to unravel. Someone at work had gotten suspicious and was asking questions. He needed my help to disappear again, and he thought seeing me get married would be the perfect cover to approach me. "I need you to say you saw me, that I survived the accident and have been living off the grid," he begged. "Just tell people I had amnesia or something. Please, Emma, I'm your brother." I stared at this man who looked like Tyler, sounded like Tyler, but was a complete stranger to me. The brother I had grieved, the brother I had loved, had never really existed. This person sitting across from me was a coward and a criminal who had stolen not just someone's identity, but 10 years of my life. I left that coffee shop without giving him an answer. I went back to my hotel room and called Jake, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. Then I called Lisa, the private investigator, and asked her to compile everything she had found into a comprehensive report. I had a choice to make. I could help Tyler disappear again, become complicit in his crimes, and let him continue living his lie. Or I could do what I knew was right, no matter how much it would hurt. The next morning I walked into the Portland Police Department with Lisa's report and told them everything. I provided evidence of identity fraud, insurance fraud, and potentially more. I gave them Tyler's address, his workplace, everything. Marcus was arrested 3 days later. The local news covered it as a bizarre case of a man living under a stolen identity for nearly a decade. Emma, his wife, had no idea who she had really been married to. Those 2 innocent kids had their world destroyed because of his selfishness. But you know what the worst part was? During the arrest, Marcus tried to claim that I had been helping him all along, that I had known he was alive and had been sending him money. He threw me under the bus to try to save himself, even after I had given him the chance to disappear again. The case is still ongoing. Marcus is facing multiple felony charges, and there's a good chance he'll spend years in prison. Emma filed for divorce and changed her and the kids' last names. She sent me a letter apologizing for what Marcus had put me through, which was incredibly kind of her considering she was a victim too. The months since then have been the hardest of my life, and that's saying something considering everything I'd already been through. I've been in therapy dealing with what psychologists call ambiguous loss, grieving someone who isn't actually dead, but isn't really alive to you anymore either. Jake has been incredible through all of this. Our marriage started with this massive trauma, but somehow it's made us stronger. He held me through countless nights when I couldn't sleep, when I'd wake up from nightmares about Tyler showing up at random moments in my life. The hardest part has been accepting that the brother I mourned, the Tyler who was my hero and protector, never really existed. That person was a fantasy I created in my grief. The real Tyler was someone who could abandon his teenage sister, fake his own death, steal someone's identity, and then try to drag me down with him when he got caught. I've had to completely rebuild my understanding of my own life story. Those memories of Tyler being the perfect big brother, I've had to examine all of them with new eyes. Were there signs of his selfishness that I missed? Were there red flags that I ignored because I needed him to be my hero? The truth is, there probably were. Tyler was always charming, always able to talk his way out of trouble. He was the kind of person who could make you feel like you were the most important person in the world when he needed something from you, but could disappear when you needed him. I found old emails and texts from before his death where I was reaching out to him about feeling lonely or struggling with money, and he barely responded. I had romanticized our relationship in my grief, turning him into this perfect guardian angel when the reality was much more complicated. 3 months after my wedding day, I'm learning to live with this new reality. I'm grieving Tyler all over again, but this time, I'm grieving the person I thought he was, not the person he actually was. In some ways, this grief is harder because it feels like mourning a lie. But I'm also learning that I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. I survived losing my parents at 14. I survived what I thought was losing Tyler at 16. I built a life for myself, found love, and created my own family. And I did all of that not because of Tyler, but in spite of him. The brother I needed, the brother I deserved, was never coming to save me because he never existed in the first place. But I saved myself, and that means more than any fairy tale about perfect siblings ever could. To anyone who's dealt with betrayal from family members, or discovered that someone you trusted has been living a lie, I want you to know that your feelings are valid. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel stupid for believing in someone. It's okay to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they share your DNA. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was living a double life? How did you handle finding out that your relationship with them was built on lies? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps us all feel less alone in dealing with betrayal and deception. And if you found this story helpful, you might want to check out our video about how I discovered my best friend had been sabotaging my relationships for years. It's another story about uncovering the truth about people we thought we could trust. Remember, the people who truly love you don't make you question your reality or gaslight you into believing their lies. You deserve relationships built on honesty and respect, and you're strong enough to walk away from anyone who can't give you that.